Welcome to Sales, Tax, and More, your go-to resource for all things state tax related. Now, here is your host, Michael Fleming.
Hello, everyone. Mike Fleming here, founder of Sales, Tax, and More, and today's co-host of the Sales, Tax, and More podcast, where we talk about everyone's favorite topic, which is, of course, sales tax. Today, we're going to be discussing e-commerce accounting with Scott Scharf. But before we introduce you to today's guest, I want to introduce you to my co-host, Ellie Moffett. Ellie, you want to say hi?
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. As always, we're excited for you to listen to today's podcast. But before we get started, I want to do a brief introduction for Sales, Tax, and More. Sales, Tax, and More is a full-service consulting and solutions firm. We have a really great team here of experienced tax professionals who are very dedicated to fulfilling your state tax or related needs. We do a lot of returns, registrations, consultations, research, and like our name states, more. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to answer those questions. Back to you, Mike.
Okay. As I mentioned, today's guest is Scott Scharf, and Scott is the co-founder of Catching Clouds. And Catching Clouds is a company that provides outsourced cloud accounting services to e-commerce businesses. Scott is extremely passionate about helping business owners run better businesses by having detailed, accurate financials so they can make great decisions. I've known Scott for years, and he loves talking to, consulting with e-commerce sellers by reviewing their technology stack, internal operations, cloud inventory, and then sales tax management. Hi, Scott. Welcome to the Sales Tax and More podcast.
No, thank you very much. It's great to be talking to everybody remotely these days, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely. So, Scott, let's dive right in. Many sellers I talk to say either they're CPAs, or they're bookkeepers, they're accountants, anyone they're working with doesn't really understand e-commerce. And, there seems to be a big disconnect here. So can you explain perhaps why there is this disconnect and why there appears to be a shortage of, accounting professionals who don't understand e-commerce?
Yeah. So I'm married to a CPA, but she's a very power user, and our peers and friends are those speakers that have been talking for years about move into the cloud, work remotely, and take a look at, leverage this technology. Now, over the last few weeks, every accountant that's been fighting working remotely is having to do that and embrace the cloud more, because by nature, we have a team of 26 accountants. They don't like change. Okay. We change a process and they're like, no, we want to go back to the old process. So it's a little bit of their approach, but everybody needs those accountants, those people that look at the details and have to build a spreadsheet and look at the numbers and the details. You need those people because they catch those details. They give information where entrepreneurs like me have entrepreneurial ADD and don't want to focus on it. So there's just a number of things. So one, CPAs and accountants aren't big on change, even though, yes, the cloud's been around for a while. The next thing is a lot of them don't really focus in on a specific niche. What they'll do is they'll take a nonprofit, which has some special accounting, and then a restaurant, which has special accounting. And then they'll take a couple services businesses, and then a chamber of commerce, and then they have one or two e-commerce businesses. The problem in that model is for some accounting, it's fairly generic and standardized. But for e-commerce, accounting is accounting, but the challenge is that they're typically not into the technology. They don't understand either the cloud accounting apps. They don't understand how to log into the different systems like Shopify to be able to rip the data out that they need to understand to get to accurate cost of goods sold. Okay, or understand the behind the scenes technology of the difference between Amazon as a marketplace and Shopify as a shopping cart, or, is Etsy a marketplace or is eBay a marketplace? There's just a lot of nuances and they haven't focused. So they don't have a set of tools. We only work with e-commerce clients that are million plus, more complex and multi-channel, which means we have the same accounting platform, Xero in our case. We have the same set of tools that we can use over and over. And then we can leverage our knowledge across a wider base of those clients, that if one client has an issue, we can apply that to everybody. So it's kind of a combination of focus. It's scary for people to go into a narrow niche, okay, and only focus on it. Now, my opinion is there's riches in the niches. You can provide more value to your customers if you're focused in an area, because I spend every day, just like you do, talking to e-commerce sellers. I understand their challenges. I understand their businesses. I know what FBA stands for. You can talk to them, and it just takes accountants a while to change. So a lot more of them will get there. More and more of their clients who they have great trusting relationships with will start adding Amazon sales or Shopify sales, and they're just going to have to learn it. And it'll be more focused, and they'll get less expertise than we have, but they'll still be working off that trusted relationship. But in general, it just takes accountants a while to change. And it takes a while to learn all these things, and all the technology's maturing and evolving. But it's really up to the sellers to decide, who's the right person. So I don't ask my lawyer to do tax stuff, and I don't ask our CPA, which we actually pay someone to do our taxes, to do bookkeeping. And they're very different things. And, if you want a sales tax expert, I point people to you for people that truly dive into that stuff, from audits and VDAs and all that other detail. You want to ask the right person to do the right job. I don't ask a carpenter to work on my car. And you don't want to ask your CPA, who's totally focused on tax, to learn all this other technology when what they care about is paying attention to tax. And that's kind of the bigger thing from a seller's perspective, is you want to ask the right person to do the right job.
Yeah, all great points, Scott. And I love that term. There's riches and niches. I think I'm going to borrow that from you.
Go for it.
E-commerce is such an important thing right now as well. So a lot going on in that world. Mike, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No. I think that you're going to touch on this now. We've got a crisis going on, and, that's showing the importance of e-commerce sellers. And, so take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying, e-commerce is more important than ever right now. And like you were saying, we're in the middle of a crisis. And I think a lot of people have a lot of questions. And a big one is how should people be managing their businesses in a financial crisis? And with everything that's going on, what would your advice be?
Yeah, the main thing is, just like everybody, don't panic. Decide that it's time to focus on the business and your finances, and then just work your way through some of the basics. The first thing for really everybody is you really need to understand your expenses and cut back those expenses. Go through all the SaaS apps that you're using to support your business and put any that you can on hold. Okay, so you just have to hunker down, and you might feel bad for those other companies or whatever else. But you need to look at that. And we're doing both the same thing. So I'm married to an accountant, so every penny's tracked, but we went through our business and knocked a few tools down. We had a couple Slack add-ons that we liked that we decided to turn off. We've cut off, some of our personal spending for things like that weren't automatically cut off, like massages and other stuff that were stopped here in Colorado. But we've put those things on hold, and you really do need to kind of step down to what your base thing is. So you really need to know your expenses. The big one is the first one, and the biggest expense for most sellers right now is take a deep dive and look at your accounting. Turn off all the automatic settings. Some of your automatic settings in this current mode could have people sitting at home clicking a lot more, but not converting into actual sales. So one of the biggest expenses beyond inventory for sellers is marketing. Go get a handle on that, and then decide what your plan is on how you're going to market, or turn it off or slow it down. But I wouldn't necessarily stop it. You need to keep maintaining a base amount, but get a handle on that. That's where you have costs that are variable and could run away on you. The other one is to build a cash flow projection. If you don't already have one, this is separate from your accounting. There's a difference between accounting, which we'll talk about more, and cash flow. Your cash is the money in the bank, and when you're paying for rent and the internet and Shopify Plus and your Amazon fees and all these other things that you need to list. What are all those expenses? What's coming out today, tomorrow, this week, next week, whatever, so that you can plan to say, this is how much money. Now, it's the same thing that you should be doing all the time, which is how much money is left over at the end of the day for sellers to spend on new product to sell, marketing to sell that product, and hopefully there's money left over as profit for the sellers to take out. But you really want to keep an eye on your cash flow, because even profitable businesses, even if you're doing well during this downturn and craziness, you need to keep an eye on your cash flow. Profitable businesses go out of business for not managing their cash on a regular basis. So those are the, just take your time and look at the long term and say, look, I'm looking at this not just immediate pain, but how does this help me over the next few weeks and few months so that you will survive this as well as potentially come out stronger. One last thing, and then is that I just want to make sure everybody, if you're looking to protect your team, okay, you have warehouse workers, you have other people in your business, take a step back, and that's great that everybody wants to do that. You have to protect the business, and you might be considering layoffs or terminations or whatever else, okay? I recommend that you check with your payroll provider or an HR expert, because things are changing. You can cut back hours for people, and then they can still get unemployment to fill that gap. So you don't have to fire them to enable your team. If you're planning on coming back in a weeks or months, you can do that. The other thing is, if you terminate people, it pushes them on COBRA and gets them off your health insurance, which is bad timing for that. And then they might have a 30, 60, 90-day delay once you bring them back before they can get back on again. So you can not pay them, but keep them on your insurance. So there are a lot of options. Most every of our clients that we've talked to are looking to keep the business long term, but they have to cut back on either hours or lay people off or whatever else. And there are better ways to do it versus I have to fire them so they get all the benefits. That's not the case. So that's the key point I wanted to make.
Yeah, and all great points. And as I'm listening to you talk about cash flow, something that you and I were talking about off screen, I just want to add here, payroll taxes, if you're doing your own payroll, and sales taxes, which are being collected from your customers. A lot of states are saying that, we'll give you extensions to this. And some of the people that I'm talking to believe that they can use this money included in their cash flow and help meet, everyday business expenses. But as we were discussing, it's not your money. You're collecting it in trust for either the state or the federal government. So that money should be put aside. That money should never be included in your cash flow because things can get a lot worse. If looking to take that money and fund your business with it through these hard times, when it comes due, when that extension is over, 60 days, 90 days, whatever the state is saying, now we're in a situation where it's tax collected, not remitted. And, the states are not saying they're going to waive that. That's serious. Now we're talking about civil, not only civil penalties, but criminal penalties. So, if you've collected that money, turn it into the state. Don't be tempted to use it to fund the business. So
I completely agree. I completely agree. Just take care of it. File your returns on time. I'm all for the IRS delay. Yeah. So the federal, your personal taxes and business taxes, we're all over that one. But for all of these ones, if you're not using a partner like Gusto that we use that escrows all the money out, so that's already out of your bank account. But I completely agree. Know what that number is. Don't include the sales tax in your cash flow projection. Know what that cash is and file it. Maybe if you're quarterly, contact the state. They'll take the money, pay it in, just know that that's not your money and that just don't touch it. And I can tell you the administrative burden, as well as engaging someone like Michael to help you deal with that, will increase whatever savings between interest and time and hassle and fines and consulting. It just never adds up.
Absolutely. And you mentioned interest there. Most of these states, if you do extend out, the interest clock keeps ticking. So they're waiving penalties, but most of the states are not waiving interest. So all great points, Scott.
No, there's a lot of prioritization that needs to happen. I think we've talked a lot about a lot of it. Why should people be focusing on accounting? We talked about right now, but in general, let's kind of broaden this so that it ages well for listeners out there. Why should they prioritize accounting?
Yeah, so accounting's not just to be used once a year to file your income taxes. And you just don't want to know once a year if you're profitable or not, okay? So we really believe in management accounting, and that accounting is not a real-time service, but it's a daily, weekly, monthly process. So you know where your business stands financially, okay? What are your expenses? What is your income? And understanding your profitability, and you have to complete each of those tasks so that you can make great decisions. If you don't know whether you're profitable or not, and it's all about adjusting your gut. And I know that everybody's super monitoring their sales and their conversion rates and their marketing spend and their cost of goods sold per unit in real time on these apps on Amazon. And that's all great. And you should be making those real-time decisions about purchasing and marketing and other things. But you need accounting that goes through double entry accounting, okay, not made up new types of accounting on an app, and that you want to make sure that you're using, you're having this data, and that all of your income, all of your expenses, all the inventory you purchase, every marketing spend, you're not missing credit cards, you're not missing PayPal, that everything's included in your, what's called your income statement, where all the income and cost of goods sold go. And then your balance sheet, which is where you're holding your inventory, which is a asset of the business. It's just cash in another form. That you need both of those things, that they need to be accurate so that you can make those right decisions and adjust your gut. We've had sellers that are like, I had a great month. And you're like, yeah, you lost a bunch of money. And they're like, why? Because of whatever reasons. And then you need to adjust that understanding so that it's just part of your regular process of being an entrepreneur and running your business. But it's all about making those great decisions, being able to sleep well at night and really understand, are you profitable or not? And then being able to see those expenses. I'm spending most of my money on marketing. Why am I spending 5 times as much on Facebook ads versus Google ads when I convert more Google? If you don't have that information, and or either yourself as an entrepreneur or an accountant that's asking you those questions, why is this? Why did you spend so much more on marketing, but your sales went down? If you don't have that information to refer to, you can't ask questions about your business, okay? So those are the big ones. And then, like we talked about, cash flow. So you can be profitable on paper in your balance sheet and look great. And that if you're not managing your cash flow, you can run out of cash and then not be able to pay bills or buy new inventory, okay? And then just keep in mind, this is a daily, weekly, monthly process. And we can tell you we do as much daily as possible because e-commerce businesses are very busy. There's lots of transactions, there's lots of complexity, and there's a lot going on. And that if you try to do it all in one weekend, once a month, you'll get behind another month and another month. And then you don't have this information. It becomes this huge project to clean up. It's something that you just want to block out time, whether you're doing it yourself, and all entrepreneurs should do it for a short while, and you can't just marry an accountant like I do. I did. And then I don't have to balance checkbooks or do any of that stuff for the last 25 years now. But you should do it long enough so that you understand it, that if you do choose to outsource it or hire someone on Upwork to do the work, you can oversee it because you're always responsible.
Great point, Scott. Now, here's a question. Who's more against made-up accounting methods, you or your wife?
Wait, who makes up the most?
No. Who's against it the most? You're talking in there and you say, you want to use double accounting. You don't want to use any of these made-up accounting methods.
Yeah.
I just thought that was a great point. But, of the two of you, which one is anti made up accounting methods, or is that equal between the two? Yeah.
It's equal. We're both, we've been doing this almost 9 years now. And our focus is just making e-commerce businesses better. And that means really accounting. And I've learned so much. I knew nothing, about accounting like 9 years ago. I know teeny bits, and I had some stuff, but when you get in, I can now read financial statements and the balance sheet and advise customers and cover a whole range of things. But there's actually a process of this accounting that when done right, truly shows you hard numbers and truth. It's so hard these days to get truth. that when accounting's done right and all the steps are done and the balance sheet balances, it means you can trust the income statement and you can trust that you're profitable or not. And then you can make decisions off trusted information. And so I'm totally a convert. I've read books like Financial Intelligence for Entrepreneurs, and I spend a lot of time looking at it. But also I'm a longtime 30-year IT geek. So I think there are great tools out there that will give you an income statement and give you that real-time data to make a decision that day, but not a financial decision where double entry accounting truly means that everything balances out and the debits and the credits all match. And that if you do that right, then you truly can have data you can trust, your investors can trust, the banks will trust, hopefully to lend you money. If you go to sell your business, it is one of the critical items to have all of those numbers under control. But in general, it just shows you everything in one place so you can make those decisions. Oh, I'm spending too much here. I'm spending too little there. And then you can see how those changes impact your business as you make changes and review those books in detail once a month.
Absolutely. And the old adage, why reinvent the wheel?
Yeah.
So the tried and true. Other than that, Scott, what are some of the accounting challenges that e-commerce sellers face?
Yeah. The biggest one is the assumption that if you make a sale, you have to record every single order in the accounting and that you have to duplicate that, and that accounting is approving every single order. Okay, that is the most biggest challenge we run into is you can't keep up. One day you could sell 20 orders and the next day you could sell 2,000. And it really is creating busy work, because the point is to get to detailed financials that allow you to make decisions. There's no law that requires you duplicate every order in your accounting system. And most of the accounting systems, Xero that we use or QuickBooks Online, which are the most common small business accounting platforms here, at least here in the US, they're not built to handle that volume of data. And it's just literally busy work that your accountants or a VA or somebody has to say, okay on and try to apply payments. You don't have to go to that level of detail. Now, if you're trying to fulfill your orders, you need a cloud inventory, another tool that has every single order. So you fulfill every order and you know whether it's canceled and shipped. The same thing for sales tax, okay? You have to have every single order, B2B, Amazon, everywhere, in your sales tax data, so you're reporting all the data properly. But from an accounting perspective, you can post summary information. For Amazon, we post 2 invoices per month that match the Amazon 2-week settlement statement. It has about 100 different fees, all the crazy Amazon fees, but that's all we need to record all the Amazon income, okay? Sales tax included, and it breaks out all of those details, and that gets you the information. For Shopify, we use the same tool, which is A2X Accounting, which we love for both Amazon and Shopify income posting, because it'll post your Shopify payment data, including fees, every single day. And that all of that data is posting the income and all of those fees and doing most of the accounting for you. And we're all about leveraging technology to help you. So that's probably the biggest one that people get caught, where they're downloading every transaction and trying to manage it. And you can be a very small business and very quickly exceed your ability to keep that up to date. But that's probably the core. People, and then in most cases, we can't use their accounting file. We have to start off with a brand new one because there's so much garbage data. You literally can't spend enough time to clean it up to fix it. So that's probably the biggest challenge. And the other challenge is there aren't automations for Etsy or Walmart or others. And then the inventory and cost of goods sold, which I will tell you is a monthly process. Once a month, you need to know the cost for all of your products for the end of that month, the inventory you have at Amazon, FBA, or any warehouse, the quantities. So you have the cost and the quantity and the SKU, and then you know what you've sold to get your cost of goods sold. I sold 100 of these widgets at $10 each. That's $1,000 of cost of goods sold. That can be a monthly process. Even if you're watching it in real time in a cloud inventory or other tool, that's a monthly process, but it's critical. But that's what's going to tell you whether you're profitable or not. If you've recorded everything through the automated bank feeds and tools like A2X, that's the last big step from accounting, that if you get those things done in e-commerce, you've covered the major portions of it. There's things that can be done better by other accountants, our team, and things like that. But that'll get you the fundamentals, is posting income, every expense, cost of goods sold, and inventory.
Great information, Scott. And I really like that you guys like A2X. Quality company. They're a company that we work with also. So
yeah, they're good friends. They're Kiwis. They're in New Zealand and they're amazing. They're good friends of ours. No, they really do provide a great value. And the difference between them and any other tool is, and it's in their name, is they understand the accounting. They understand accrual versus cash accounting, and that they're very focused on getting accurate accounting information, not just it's data for data's sake.
Absolutely. So, Scott, this is all great information. We could talk all day long about this, but how do you work with people directly? So if someone wants to follow up, how are ways they can interact with you?
Thank you. There are a number of things. So first, we have a YouTube channel called Catching Clouds Academy, which has 100 plus YouTube videos, all free, all my wife, Patty, mostly, presenting topics in a common sense way in which we're just trying to help, because our main focus is to help those sellers move forward. For people that are looking to do their accounting themselves, or you have your accountant that has no idea about technology or how A2X, we have our accounting for Amazon and our accounting for Shopify course. They're $400 each, but they don't cover how to do all accounting. What they focus on is how do you post the income and cost of goods sold for either an Amazon business or a Shopify business. Okay. We also have our Facebook groups that support that, one for sellers and one for accountants. So we spend a lot of time supporting our peers and cross-training and coaching them to help other sellers, because we can't possibly work with everybody. And then I'm always happy to talk to sellers. So if you contact us through catchingclouds.net.net/contact and fill out that contact form, I really respond to almost every single question, request. And if it's not something we do, or if somebody wants only sales tax support, we point them at sales tax and more. And I'll happy to answer those questions. But if you're a $1 million plus seller and you want detailed, accurate financials, our main service is providing that outsourced accounting, in which we do the daily, weekly, monthly accounting. You have a team of 3 supporting somebody doing all the bookkeeping daily, an accountant that's doing all the accounting, and then a controller who's a CPA that makes sure the balance sheet balances, is paying attention to all the details. We're overseeing sales tax, and that they're educating you on how to read the financials and helping with that interpretation. So if you didn't start your business to do accounting, that you built your business to support your big why or whatever else, and you've outsourced your fulfillment, you're doing other things, you've outsourced marketing maybe, and you want to outsource your accounting, that's what we're here for. We're just looking for long-term relationships. This is what we do, and we love doing it.
And you do it very well. I mean, I must know you now, Scott, for 8-9 years. And you guys have always done a great job. So, and Patty does excellent work on those videos. I've watched quite a number of them myself. So really appreciate you coming on. And by the way, we can get you in touch with Catching Clouds and Scott also. But I really want to thank you for sharing some of your knowledge today. And, there's so much to cover. Perhaps we can, have you back at some point in the future to share a little bit more of your knowledge, especially as we see some of this crisis unfold and what you're seeing out there. And we can share some of your experiences. But thanks again.
No, thank you. This has been great. Happy to help.
Okay. And if any of you have any sales tax needs, need any information about how the different states are responding to this crisis that we have here, we've got a new chart going up. It's going to be detailing what all of the states are doing. And, in general, as both Scott and I have said, you don't really want to take advantage of these extensions unless you absolutely have to. And then more for the paperwork not being able to get done rather than the money. You really don't want to be using the money in your business. But we're going to have a chart out there for every state in what they are or are not doing. Other great resources, lots of free resources up on the website. And of course, we can help you with just about any state tax related service out there. So thanks for joining us in this edition of the Sales Tax and More podcast. And we hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to click subscribe and check out all of the resources we have out on the web.